Welcome to the Mr. Beacon podcast, the hitchhiker's guide to ambient intelligence, auto ID, physical digital convergence. One of the things that I feel like it's really important for us to understand is disruptive technologies, core technologies. And one of those is distributed ledger, blockchain, and other related stuff. I have to confess to being a bit of a skeptic, but I am starting to see really valuable applications. And whilst there's been a whole lot of, I guess you could say, fraudulent applications or applications of the technology that just haven't been worthwhile, then now we're starting to see stuff that has real value. And so I wanted to bring in an expert, and we found one, Jose Cantera, who is based out of Spain. He's a very senior architect who's got a ton of experience with real world, very large projects. And so he's not just an evangelist for the technology. He's someone who's actually seen the application of this and other leading edge technologies. So we really get into it. We talk about blockchain, distributed ledger, Tangle, where to use it, an initiative called Twin, which is a huge food visibility project in Africa where IOTA's technology is being used. So that's an important thing. Jose works at IOTA and our paths crossed on a smart food chain project, and I thought it would be great to get him in. So I hope you enjoy our discussion. Well, Jose, welcome to the Mr. Beacon podcast. I often say that I'm excited to have our guests on, but in your case, it's especially true because you are an expert on distributed ledger technology, smart food chains, blockchain, what is a blockchain, what isn't a blockchain. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't really understand that stuff. And I've always been a bit skeptical about blockchain. And I've said some skeptical things about it, but I think if I look into my heart, it's because A, I don't really understand it. Hopefully you can help there. B, I'm convinced that 90% of other people don't really understand it. And C, I think because they don't understand it, they've been using a perfectly good technology for things that they shouldn't be using it for, and not for the things they should. So my hope in our conversation is that you can make me a little bit smarter about what this technology is and where to use it and where it's been successful, and we can agree maybe even where not to use it. And also, what is distributed ledger versus blockchain versus whatever it is that IOTA does. So maybe I should stop talking and let you introduce yourself briefly. Tell us about what your job is, and tell us, when you're explaining to your friend's mum what IOTA is, how do you explain it? Because I actually just explained what IOTA is to my mum, and I can tell you what I said after you tell me.
No, it's a good point. So, well, IOTA is a project. It's one of the projects of blockchain that has been there now for 10 years. So it's a long time. Actually, the foundation is 8 years old, but the project is now 10 years old. So it is a long road until here. And essentially, what it's developing IOTA is not only the distributed ledger technology, not, I would say, the infrastructure, but also applications on top, an ecosystem of applications on top of it. And one of these ecosystems that we are building is supply chains. All that has to do with supply chains. Now it's evolving into talking about value chains for circular economy. And the capability that offers IOTA is very simple, as any ledger of blockchain. Then we will talk in more detail about that. But it is you can issue transactions to an infrastructure, and those transactions can be recognized and agreed by multiple nodes in a network. And there is consensus. So when you issue a transaction and the transaction is confirmed by the network, that transaction cannot be, I would say, destroyed. So it cannot be changed. It's immutable. So not only the data that it is in the ledger, in the system, is immutable, but also it is auditable. So you can know who did what when, and that cannot be reversed. So cannot be forced, cannot be tampered.
Yes.
And also there is transparency. So you know who did what. You at least you have the address, an identifier of who did
Yes.
what. So you cannot repudiate something because the other people in their node of the network, they can see it and say, you did this. And if you try to just undo
Right.
that, you cannot, because the other nodes in the network will not recognize that.
Okay.
And that's another capability. So you have immutability, there is auditability, there is traceability, as I said, but there is a fourth capability that was incorporated, especially by Ethereum, which is the capability of executing logic, or executing programs that are themselves immutable, and this is the smart contracts. So the smart contracts do things. It's like the store procedures in your database, similar to that manage your data. And using these capabilities, in my job is using these capabilities to build supply chains, to digitize supply chains, assuming that supply chains are built with multiple actors. So multiple actors need to participate, multiple actors need to issue transactions, and multiple actors then need to agree and need to have trust. And the ledger can give this layer of trust to these multiple actors so that they can aspire, they can have the aspiration of decentralization. So none of the actors have the power. There is equal power among them, and there is, a notary that, in case of dispute, is there. That's the summary, but we can
Yes.
enter into more detail as you ask me.
Yeah. We'll dig into this in great detail and explore all the implications, and hopefully even talk about some other related things like Twin, which is kind of an interesting project in Africa around supply chains. But let's just finish off painting the opening picture, which is, what's your job at IOTA? What do you do? It sounds like you're working architecting the application of this technology for
Yes.
real world projects. Is that
Yes,
okay?
yes.
All right.
So I am a technical lead and architect, and I've been defining the vision during these years, developing projects, but also developing the vision around how we could apply distributed ledger technology, the IOTA distributed ledger technology, to the problems in supply chains. And this architecture, in the end, is what has been transitioning through the years into what it is now, the Twin initiative that we are going to talk about.
Yeah.
But in my job, daily job, I've contributed to standards. For instance, I've contributed to the APCIS 2.0 standard with GS1. I developed, in collaboration with other companies, prototypes, etc., that apply the IOTA technology to these supply chain problems. I was also involved in the pre-commercial procurement with the European Commission for blockchain. It was a very demanding project, but we learned a lot there. And I think IOTA is that kind of partnership are very unique to IOTA and that kind of experience. So there are.
Tell us a bit more about that. Can you clarify what that
Yes.
what that European Union project was?
The European Commission has currently a blockchain infrastructure which is called EBSI, but main issue there is scalability. I mean, supporting all the amount of transactions for a public blockchain infrastructure for Europe. And they ask IOTA essentially and other, I would say, other people, other companies, what could you do? And there was different phases, and we
Yes.
reached the last phase where only 3 projects remained, and IOTA was one of them. And the idea was, can you build a distributed ledger technology that can scale, can be can be energy efficient, can have the throughput, can do data serving, so multiple networks, and we
Yeah.
explore
Yeah.
all those problems, and we
Yeah.
made the studies. I mean, it was a pre-commercial, so it was doing the studies, seeing this can work, this cannot work. We developed some applications as well as demonstrators, for instance, with intellectual property rights management and with digital product passports, which is very, very close to supply chains. And that was the partnership. The real procurement has not happened yet, because EBSI, and the organization in the European Commission is shaping up. But the results of that project, I think they've been very, very good, and they allow us to understand what are the real applications for blockchain and distributed ledger technology, but also the real limitations and how they could be overcome.
So, did the IOTA protocol product platform evolve as a result of that project where you looked at scalability?
Yes, in the sense, there was a major change in IOTA last year, and it was. I mean, we've been developing consensus protocols for our Tangle technology, what was called IOTA 2.0. But unfortunately, I mean, the pace of the R&D was not, the same pace that other actors could do. And it happened that SUI and Aptos and other projects, they've managed to reach scalability levels of like 50,000 TPS in their ledgers with their R&D. And that was, a ring for us saying, look, maybe we should look into what they are doing, adopting some of their protocols, especially on the consensus side, because that would help us in our efforts, and this is
Yeah.
why we adopted
Yeah.
some of the suite technology into IOTA. It was because doing the same R&D for us, it would mean like 3-4 more years and not being able
Yes.
to catch up, and the only way to catch up and
Yeah.
offer to the market this scalability was getting technology from SUI and adapted it, etc. And another feature was that now we support layer 1 smart contracts. So we can execute the smart contracts on the IOTA network in the Move language. And that's a language that it is better in terms of security than Solidity. And that's, I would say, a leap forward in our technology. And this is very beneficial, for our applications, for supply chains, because we are going to need eventually that kind of scalability levels. So yeah, that
Yes.
has been an influence, because
Yeah.
we knew that for certain applications and in certain scenarios, you need to scale and to have very high throughput. And the confirmation times, again, now are, in the millisecond fraction. So it is very,
Yes.
very an improvement, very, very recognizable.
Okay. So just to summarize, make sure I've understood what you've said. And then I want to take a step back and talk more high level about the benefits. And then I want to take a step forward and go into some more of the details of some of the buzzwords that you use to explain them and understand them better. But at a high level, you were involved in this European Union sponsored project where one of the goals was to establish the scalability of something that would be truly vast in the end. What you saw was that there were some vendors out there that could achieve massive throughput, over 50,000 transactions per second, which sounds like a lot. And so you ended up creating version 2 of your offering that was a lot more scalable. You looked at the need for more secure smart contracts. And,
Exactly.
so that's also been reflected into your product. So I want to just take a step back and ask the why question, which is, we've had food supply chains for tens of thousands of years without distributed ledger technology. Why do we need all of this, what seems kind of very confusing for those of us who are newbies, new to all of this? Why do we need to invest all this time and money into this thing when, we've been harvesting wheat and shipping it off and selling it and buying it? And what are the big problems that this technology addresses?
No, that's a very good question. Well, so I think if we look into, but we need to look it into different perspectives. So I mean, there is a general, I would say, ethos around society that, for instance, sustainability. So people are worried about sustainability. Governments are worried about sustainability, but also consumers are worried about sustainability in the sense of, for instance, when they eat food, not only that it comes from sustainable sources, but also it is healthy, So there is a conscience that we need to have more information on items. It is in the food supply chain for sure, because it is what we are eating and it may have an impact on our health. But on the other hand, businesses know that. And sometimes they make claims about products that how could you verify those claims? And even they don't have the way
Yes.
to actually state those claims in a verifiable manner.
Yes. No, and the thing that really brought this home to me was I spent a bunch of time with Frank Yanis, who was one of the leading leaders, a leading leader at the FDA. And he has a famous saying, which I love, which is, there's twice as much organic food sold as is grown in the United States, which I think kind of illustrates the fact that people are charging the premium and getting the money, and we're paying the money, but maybe it's not really what it says on the label. And I think what you're saying is consumers are not stupid. They've had enough. They want to know where the food comes from, what's the environmental impact of this product versus the other, because the only way we're going to see change is, it's going to be if consumers vote with their purses and their wallets, and enough of them care about getting the chemicals out, reducing the carbon footprint, but they can't act if they can't trust the information. And what you're saying is IOTA's distributed ledger technology can give you that visibility and trust so that consumers get what they want. And it seems like the European Union, at least, is doing everything it can to make this happen. So hopefully there will be companies spending money on this kind of thing.
Exactly. And also there is another important point, that it is the cross-border aspect, for instance. So sometimes we consume food that it is coming from outside, even Europe. And how do you ensure that the certification made in another country, maybe it comes from the ecologic agriculture, how do you ensure that it is recognized in Europe as well? How do you prove that? Right. So there is a problem of trust
Yes.
and data exchange among actors actors that might be across the world, and you need that interoperability. But on the other hand, there can be poor countries or countries that are more in development, that the companies there are small or medium size, and they cannot afford those kind of technology. And this is where offering technology that it is open source can help them a lot, because can be adopted more easily by development organizations in the country, because of course if they go to a typical provider, it's more difficult to justify. If they adopt some open source and they work with non-for-profits, etc., and that's very important for them, because it's enabling them to participate in digital ecosystems, but also to trade more with other parts of the world, and those other parts of the world have more trust in what they are producing, etc., that they are respecting, you know, the real. So
Yeah, that is a really important point. So, I think we all want to see the developing countries pull themselves up and get the financial wherewithal so that they're healthier, there's less disease, there's less poverty, more happiness. And, they have these incredible assets, coffee beans, and maybe they're growing them organically, or maybe they just come from a really interesting part of the world. But unless they can prove it in a way that integrates with these very big, complex, technology-driven supply chains, they can't get the rewards for this asset that can help, hopefully, lift them out of poverty. So the fact that you've got something that's open source gives them an affordable way of joining in to this trust network where they can start to get a way of earning themselves out of poverty, which I think is super important. One of the things that really struck me, and I want to be candid about this, is that there was a lot of noise about blockchain in food supply chains in the United States a few years ago. One of the biggest technology companies worked with one of the biggest grocers, and they announced a blockchain project. And, my sense is that it wasn't super successful. There was a lot of good people that put a lot of good effort into it. But and I'll tell you what my diagnosis of this thing is, and I don't know it very well, so I could be completely off base. But one was, this big technology company thought that they could charge lots of money for this software, and food supply chains typically have very small margins. And so they kind of did this amazing deal with this flagship customer, and then they tried to sell this Cadillac, Mercedes product to people that really were only in the market for kind of a Skoda, or actually Skodas are quite nice now, but they basically were selling a premium product to an ecosystem that was only going to spend money on, a bare bones economy product, and they kind of didn't meet. And I think that was one problem. And then the other problem that I saw was this big customer that they sold it to. What you just described is, here's a platform that allows us to establish trust. But this big customer didn't need trust because they're huge and they know everyone and everyone knows them. And if you step out of line and sell them something that's bad, then, you're just not going to do it. If you do, you're not going to last very long. So essentially, all this benefit of trust and distributed, relationships between people that don't know each other was a complete waste of time, because these guys know who their suppliers are and the suppliers know who they are. So I don't know, have I got the wrong end of the stick, or would you agree with anything that I've just said?
I think there has been a previous generation of blockchain projects that, and you mentioned this one, but there is another one I think from the same company, which is Trade. The name of the project was Trade the Lens as well. That it was a failure in blockchain, and essentially, I think one of the points is the usage of private blockchains. Private blockchain technology. So essentially, they were using the private blockchain technology for writing data into an immutable database. But in the end, this is from a technology point of view. Then we can talk about business point of view. From a technology point of view, it was like a central platform that was writing the data into a private blockchain. But in the end, you need to go to the central platform, use the APIs, and put all your data there, so to say. And even sometimes, even the actors, they don't have their own nodes. So in the end, it's like a data hub architecture. And this happened in the past. And I think in the end, it makes you to start publishing all your data, giving all your data to an actor that it is very powerful. And that's something you may not want to do. So you may want to be very granular in the data you want to share with other actors. And that's one of the interesting parts of this new generation of solutions that I'm seeing is the data space part. So in the data space, you have sovereignty over your data, and you decide to share some of your data with other actors, but you keep your data with you. And that's a difference.
Yes.
And you use the ledger that can be a public ledger, does not need to be a private thingy, to generate commitments over the data. So you cannot tamper your own data once you have disclosed a transaction in the ledger saying this is the data. You cannot change the data because you will calculate the fingerprint of the data and they will not match. So that's a different way of approaching. But the problem here is you are talking from a business point of view or from a use case point of view. You are talking about the relationship between one very powerful actor with their providers, and that might be fine, that they have trust. But the problem comes, for instance, when you need to share the data with the regulator, for instance. How do you do that, and how the regulator can verify those kind of statements? But on the other hand, also with the consumer, because in the end, the consumer may need to put trust on this big actor, and the big actor could do whatever wants. So it's a way of multiple people capturing data and multiple people certifying, maybe multiple also certification bodies when it is needed act, and then you share that information around and can be verified independently. That does not imply that there are special relationships between the big actor and their providers. And that is also supported from a data space point of view. There can be individual agreements of sharing data between them, and maybe you even need ledger transactions because you have trust by definition. But there can be other transactions, that you are interested in recording them in a ledger. So I think that it is also a mistake is trying to store all your data in the blockchain. And no, you don't need to store your data there. You need to store commitments to certain data that it is key. It is key for demonstrating something to someone, or to demonstrate that you actually share the data. You exchange the data and you reflect that. That this date, So it's a different way of thinking. So I see these two differences. One is from a technological point of view, this approach, but also from, I would say, the current setup implies that there is more pressure from consumers and from regulators to know information.
Yes. Well, but in the United States, the Food Safety Modernization Act, Rule 204, which is all about traceability, the format they're asking for is a spreadsheet. So that's not really going to drive the adoption of blockchain very fast. But I'm sensing that maybe in Europe, they are more interested in getting their data through blockchains, the regulators. Is that true?
At least there is a lot of interest in that this happens through data space technology. So there are, ways of sending this data. In the end, is through an API, and so there is interest in this automation of the data exchange.
Yes.
It is true that
Yes.
there is now a big demand at the moment that it is supported by blockchain. But this is where we come back to the EPSI project, in which Europe also wants to have distributed ledger for this kind of relationship between governments and businesses, and ideally as well consumers in the future. But the development of EPSIs is not going fast, so to say, but it is there. So it is something that the European Commission has already invested money and is invested money. So let's say that the pace is not fast, but things will go through, in the end. And this is why we have projects.
I want to clarify what you just said there, because I may not have understood it properly. So there's this standard from GS1 called EPCIS, the Electronic Product Code Interchange Standard, and we've had at least a couple of episodes on it in the past, in the archives. People can go back, and I interviewed Dominic Gunnard, who have you worked with Dominic?
Yes, we work in different projects together.
Okay, so friend of the podcast, so is that what you're talking about, or this European project, or is that something different?
It's ABSI, it's the European Blockchain Services Infrastructure.
Okay.
And so essentially it's the blockchain infrastructure for Europe. And this is a project that the European Commission has invested some amount of money, and this is IOTA. We have contributed to the pre-commercial procurement of the next generation of EPSI. That's a project that we work for some years. So that gives there is some appetite there that in the end that the blockchain technology is going to provide a value in digital ecosystems, and also in the relationship between governments, business, and consumers as well. So I see three technologies that are key in this digital public infrastructures that are being built at the moment, which is digital identity, data spaces, and distributed ledgers. Is the three. And digital identities, there are programs across the world, and the UDI in Europe, but I know in the USA there are programs as well. There is the data spaces that started in Europe as the idea of data spaces, but it is now across the world as well. And if you combine these three pieces wisely, is going to be the basis of the digital public infrastructures of the next 10 years, I think.
And what you've described, the European Blockchain Infrastructure Project, that's an example of a public blockchain as opposed to big grocery company that says everyone's got to start using XYZ blockchain if they want to sell to us. That's kind of it in simple terms.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. In our vision, the blockchain, I would say, of Europe could be a trust anchor for multiple other blockchains, So your company may be using your own blockchain network, but that network can be federated. And that network, it is possible, and that's something we demonstrated, is that different subnetworks could be anchored into a big network, so that all the transactions, for instance, from a day can be summarized into a transaction, just one transaction in the main core blockchain. So you can have blockchains of blockchains. And that's the key thing for thinking about the scalability in the future. You can have like a backbone blockchain, but then other that are around. And provided that they are recognized by whoever. So imagine that an association of textile or for food recognize a particular blockchain to be a trust anchor for the data, and can be. But that can be also be certified by Europe, by being also, part or being anchored into the whole core infrastructure. So this is a powerful vision.
So, yeah, so would this core infrastructure, would that span verticals? So you might have food and apparel and batteries, and that's all kind of rolling up into a common infrastructure. Is that what you're describing?
Yeah, they can have their own networks and then roll up into the core, and being recognized, being certified by, by the regulator. Because of course, if you want to be certified, it's both because you are going to use certain transactions there to prove facts against the regulator, or if you want, to be a business that is compliant, so on and so forth.
Yeah. So I think whenever, this is still new, and it sounds like it's going to take a while before it all becomes ubiquitous and just expected, a true infrastructure that's available everywhere. And so you get into this area of timing. And I think, people that make things, whether it's food or clothing, they're busy. They've got too many things to do. And then suddenly someone from a technology organization comes to them and says, hey, you should be implementing this distributed ledger technology. And they're like, well, thanks very much, but I've got other things to do. And the thing that we often use, I mean, we kind of come at it in two ways, as those of us that are kind of interested in moving to the future. One is look at the benefits. It's kind of the carrot. And then there's, if you don't do it, then you're going to be breaking the law. And that's kind of the stick. Where are we in terms of the carrot and the stick, in terms of what are the segments where you think this technology is going to be adopted fastest? And can you relate it to the carrot and the stick in those areas? Is food one of them, or is it going to be clothing, or is it where's it going to happen first?
I think in the document, in international trade, for instance, when different actors need to exchange documents, particularly because in international trade there are a lot of documents that accompany the consignments that are moved across the world. So when they need to interchange documents and then have some trust that it is not based in a stamp in a paper, that's one area of adoption that we see very promising. And now we have projects in East Africa, we have projects in the United Kingdom, and others coming using our twin infrastructure based on IOTA to support those use cases. Having said that, for food, for digital product passports as well, there is still a ramp up period. So there is, and there, the good thing is that the regulation is helping, because in Europe, the ESPR regulation, the digital product passport, is coming into force next year, in a year and a half. for certain products, and that would imply that the manufacturers and other actors would need to start capturing data and sharing data and providing more trust to consumers, enabling also the circular economy. So there is that opportunity, that regulation together with this conscience around sustainability, circularity, etc., stimulate the adoption of, of these technologies that starts with capturing more data, but also capturing the provenance of the data and sharing the data among these actors while keeping the sovereignty, which is a key thing that we are addressing in IOTA with the twin initiative. So, but still is difficult, you know. There is still a lot of legacy in companies, and this is why we are saying, look, please develop an adapter to your legacy, but don't throw away your existing system.
Yeah. So what are the key examples of adapters that you're seeing that might help with this transition?
Yeah. For instance, in international trade, every country more or less has a single window system, which essentially is the system that has all the documents there. But the problem is that that's a central hub of the data. So an adapter between
Okay.
this single window system and your own node in the supply chain, your own node that has all your data, it's an example. But there are other systems, SAP systems, that are being used by many manufacturers and adapters to that enable to share that data and to open up that data to a digital product passport or to circular economy ecosystem that also would be needed. So we need a lot of adapters
Okay.
to allow these people to start
Yeah.
opening up their
Yeah.
data,
Yeah.
participating.
Do any of them exist today? Is there an SAP to IOTA adapter? Is there an example of a single window adapter?
Not yet,
Okay.
but is one of the things that we would like to have an ecosystem of people that starting building these adapters and
Okay.
creating them and offering them even as a commercial product. So we don't, because
Yeah.
the open source layer can coexist with commercial offering by others.
So you mentioned ESPR just now. For those people that don't know, can you what is that?
Yeah, the ESPR is the regulation in Europe that eh, that aims at environmentally sustainable products. So it implies that in different sectors, for instance, textile, manufacturers are going to need to publish a digital product passport that not only has information about the provenance of the product and the, I would say, the components, but also how to recycle it, different aspects, you know, and that would allow to enable the circular economy because you will have more information, and even in certain products, for instance, batteries, you could capture an extra records about the life of the item, and anybody can get access to that information. And when there is a second life of the product, you can know what actually happened with it, etc., etc. So there is this regulation that for that tells the market, look, provide more information, digital information to products in order to enable a real circular economy. And different
Yeah.
actors may appear. Not only is the manufacturer, is the repairer, is the refurbisher, it can be the recycler, the voice manager, all this ecosystem towards creating a real a circular economy. And we did some experiments. Actually, with Dom Guinard, we did experiments with plastics, etc. So very interesting stuff there. We can talk other day.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a whole other thing. So, but those deadlines are coming up soon, right? So people are having to take action.
Yes, and this is why in IOTA we want to support them in our software as well, And now the standards bodies in Europe are finalizing the recommendations, and we plan to be aligned there so that people can use our software to build our digital product passport systems and capture the
Yeah, yeah.
information and so on and so forth.
Well, and to that point, on this podcast, we've had the chair of Senelec JTC24, and we've had the vice chair on the podcast. So you're in good company. And I found that very interesting. 2 questions. Have you heard anything more about the timescales of when people will be able to access those, the details of those standards?
I have access actually.
You have access because you're part of a national
Yes.
standards group, right?
Yeah. But now they are public, by the way, so you can get access through the standards, any of the standards bodies, national. 6 of the documents are public now.
Okay.
But the standards actually rely on other standards. So they recommend, for instance, using the GS1 digital link, or or using decentralized identifiers for identifying actors. That's part of the standard. So, I mean, it's a standard that you will find the different documents very, very lightweight, in the sense that they are referenced to other ISO or GS1 stuff. So in that regard, it is open close in that regard, So, but this is the versions I know of. But I think there will be refinements along the year.
No doubt. Help me just put these jigsaw pieces together, because it is a bit confusing. And we've had actually Dominic Gunnard came on and told us all about digital links. So for those of you that didn't listen to the episode, essentially it's a web address, a URL, a URI maybe, that identifies, you can scan a QR code, you get this web address that gives you the information about the product.
Yes.
So I think I more or less understand that. And then we've got another GS1 standard, which is the EPCIS, which is kind of telling us the story of where did it come from, why did it move, where did it move, kind of, this is like, okay, I know I've got a dress, but actually this is where the dress was made from, and this is where it came from. So how does, and then presumably JTC 24 is kind of spelling out the data format of all of the attributes that you're using in the digital link, and you're populating with with EPCIS. How does IOTA's blockchain fit into all of that? It's quite a jigsaw that we're talking about here. Help me understand it, how it fits together.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, because EPCIS is an append-only structure of events, so you are always appending to the database new events. Yes. However, nothing prevents to rewrite events, But with a distributed ledger, I could commit to my set of events of a day into a transaction, or using a transaction to the ledger, and then ensure that the history is not tampered with, because so there is a very good complementary use case for so you don't need to store EPCIS events on chain. That's not the case. So you will store your EPCIS events in your database, and we have actually an implementation based on ShylaDB, which you maybe know. It's a scalable database.
Okay.
And actually, you can store the events there, so you have massive scalability, and then you can have from time to time commitments to the ledger and enable verifiability, at real-time stamping without someone rewriting the event. And that can be very interesting. So, for instance, imagine contracts between a logistic provider and a customer, and you have some deadlines, and you can, timestamp your events, and there is no dispute, of course. And that is, you would say,
Oh,
but that can be combined also with physical events. So if a
okay.
warehouse in if a warehouse has some kind of RFID technology, you can automatically detect that the product was there at a particular time and reflect that as well
Okay.
in the ledger. So that could be a combination between the
Yes.
physical world and the ledger world to certify that actually happened at a particular point in time. And that can be combined as well with EPCIS events. So we did some experiments on that
Okay.
in the past as well with Zebra technologies, with RFID readers, so on and so forth. So that would give us another another time for conversation as well.
Yeah, yeah. But just to give some context to what you described, so retailers and other actors in the supply chain often have contracts with their suppliers, and they call it on time in full. So, yeah, I'm going to pay this amount of money for this product, but you've got to get it to me on time and you've got to get to me in full. Otherwise, I'm going to actually fine you because it's very important to me, because I'm going to get a lot of complaints from my customers if the shelves are empty. So there's like a really important reason why. And then you have arguments about, well, it was on time and it wasn't on time and it wasn't in full. And I think what you're saying is these EPCIS events, which will record a movement from one location to another, will be connected in some way to a transaction in your distributed ledger that will be totally secure, and there'll be no argument about whether this EPCIS shipping event or receiving event is actually true. Is that correct?
Exactly. And even you could go further, which is the contract between the two actors could be a smart contract in the ledger. So when that happens, automatically and inexorably will pay whatever whatever value to the other actor. So that could be automated as well.
So what systems are generating these smart contracts? So I'm a progressive grocery chain. I want to move to smart contracts. This sounds like a way of automating what is otherwise a bit of a mess, making it more efficient. Is SAP supporting smart contracts now, or are there other systems that do this?
Smart contracts, fortunately, the main usage, well, not unfortunately, is the situation. The main usage nowadays is in the centralized finance use cases, which is more, it's implementing what banks do traditionally, but on chain, etc. But we see potential of smart contracts in other use cases, automating things, automating contracts that are written, into code, and
Yes.
automating and
Yeah.
making things fully automated. Who deployed us? Of course, you would need to have a decentralized application that provides those smart contracts
Yeah.
for these actors to to
Yes.
to to work. So it is easy to be said,
Yeah.
more difficult to be implemented.
Okay, we've got this high-tech gumbo soup of all these technologies. Let's throw another one in. Where does AI fit into all of this? Do you think AI agents are going to drive this? It seems like if I have an AI agent as a buyer and you have an AI agent as a seller, having smart contracts, automated trust, that's like a good thing. That's going to allow them to have a productive conversation. Is that?
Yeah. I mean, AI in general, it can play a role, especially in this kind of decentralized systems where there are multiple actors, and these multiple actors, they need to exchange data. Agents can collaborate.
Yeah.
So this collaboration that now maybe is fixed in the sense that a human programs it, maybe it's an agent that agrees. But still, um, there is a role for sure in going into that direction, and this in the next years could go into that direction. But still, there is a gap in the adoption even of data spaces ledgers, that we are having a new layer, that it is AI, more technology. It is possible for sure, and can play a role.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my hope is that you can get money for AI, so hopefully AI will drive the move to AI will drive adoption of these things that we're talking about. Let's. There's just a few things I want to tick off, and then I'm going to let you go because we've been talking for a while. Tell us a bit about the Twin project, because part of the thing that the bee I have in my bonnet, the thing that bugs me is people have been trying to use blockchain for things where there's already trust and there's really no benefit. But it seems like the Twin project is an example where, because it's being adopted by developing countries that are in the business of buying and selling commodities, this is potentially a good application. What is Twin, and tell us how it fits in with what distributed ledger technology is
Yes.
good
Yes.
at.
So essentially, Twin is the result of our R&D in IOTA, of applied R&D of DLTs for supply chain problems, supply chain ecosystems. And it is, I would say, a layer on top of IOTA, that it is open source as well. And it is a layer that combines these three technologies, combines data spaces, combines distributed ledger, and it combines decentralized identity together, that allows you to capture all the data in your supply chains and store it in traditional data stores, object stores. But at the same time, when you want and the conditions you decide, you can commit parts of that data to a ledger, so that when you share the data with other actors, you have this trust among the actors. And how it is implemented is to the concept of, that there is the concept of blockchain node or DLT node. What we have here, twin node, and a twin node is more than a blockchain node. It's all the layers that allow you to really capture the data and to offer the data to other actors in a permission based way. So there is a catalog of that allows you to discover who the different actors are, and you can exchange data in a data space manner with the different actors, and have the ledger as the trust layer. And this model has been experimented already in both East Africa, where it started, also in the United Kingdom. But we are collaborating with other ecosystems. For instance, Virtual Watchtower, which is a maritime transport ecosystem, and a smart food chain, that it is a food ecosystem that we are working together as well. So different ecosystems can be created, different ecosystems can share data can be kept by each actor, and there is trust among the different actors. And an important role is decentralized identity, so identities that are fully auditable and registered in the ledger, etc., etc. And it is open source project. It started in IOTA, but we created a consortium that also the World Economic Forum, Tony Blair Institute, other parties are part of it.
So that's a pretty great set of authoritative bodies that are trying to make this happen. What kind of commodities are being traded using Twin today?
That's a good point. So we have in East Africa, the main commodity there are flowers, and flowers is it seems to be easy, but it is not that easy because you need to have multiple documents to be interchanged. For instance, phytosanitary flowers do need a phytosanitary certificate that has to be interchanged, but you need certificates of origin to justify the origin because tariffs might be different depending on the origin. And also in the UK, in the digitization of the food supply chain between continental Europe and the UK. So the UK is getting a lot of food from continental Europe, and those trade lanes are complicated, especially after Brexit, where multiple certificates are needed for the food to enter into the UK, and it needs to go through different customs. It needs to go through ports, and that's you know a lot of problems. So that's the two main, I would say, use cases. As I said, with the virtual watchtower, we are starting to digitize career. So the data sharing of career transport, maritime career transport, because as well there are multiple actors that know where your container is, but and things
Yes.
like that. Another, I mean,
Oh,
so multiple I would say areas. I would say in a nutshell, it's still a child ecosystem, but we'll have high hopes that this can grow, especially in Africa, where there is a potential for a free continental trade area. So whole Africa being a single trade area, and you can imagine the different countries needing to exchange documents so that the compliance can be verified, and so there is a huge potential, but still we need to grow a lot.
well, let's hope Twin blooms in Africa. I can resist it. Tell me, is it true that IOTA is a distributed ledger but is not a blockchain? Is that true
Yeah,
or not?
it's true. I mean, we've not been using blockchain because blockchain is just a particular way of solving a consensus in this kind of systems. So essentially, blockchain implies that each block is processed after one after the other, and each block contains different transactions, and you have miners that need to mine the block, or validators that need to issue the block one after the other. And um, and we are not using blockchain. We are using um, graphs. So essentially, you have a graph of different transactions, and these transactions a subgraph of transactions can be approved at the same time. So you don't have blocks, one after the other. You can have parallel processing of the different transactions, and this is one of the points to differentiate against blockchain. And traditional blockchains, for instance, bitcoins, were not thought from the beginning to store data. They were thought to store just the minimal data for a value transaction. And IOTA from the beginning was thought also for the data use cases. And this is why it's more a distributed ledger rather than a typical blockchain for value transaction, for crypto business. So IOTA has been thought not for the crypto use cases, has been thought from the beginning for the data, mainly for the data use cases. So crypto is a secondary aspect.
So maybe it's a little bit more environmentally friendly. You don't have some guy with a bunch of servers in his basement that's the lights are all dimming because he's mining so much blockchain, you can distribute and use the computing that everyone, the spare cycles that everyone has. Is that
That's true.
is that
That's
true?
true. So the efficiency of graph base DAG in the terminology in terms of energy consumption, it's is considerable better. I mean, in terms of energy, and it can be in the 1,000 times less energy consumption. But of course, depends on the numbers that you can get. That we did a study in this project with European Commission about energy consumption. The numbers, of course, depend on the number of validators, the kind of transactions, but overall, in general, yes, the systems like IOTA, based on graphs for reaching consensus, are more efficient in terms of energy consumption. And the other point is that they scale better in that regard. So if you a linear increment in the number of transactions does not imply a linear increment in the energy consumption. It's like logarithmic.
Yeah.
But with
Okay.
typical blockchain systems tends to be linear as well, so it's more efficient in
Okay.
general.
So 2 last questions. One is, how does IOTA and your distributed ledger, it's like a tangle. Is that what it's called? It's not a blockchain, it's a tangle, or is that, have I
Well,
got that
that's
wrong?
the tangle essentially is the graph that it is built with the different transactions
Okay.
between nodes, and then the approval happens over that graph.
Yeah. So it's the graph, the tangle. How does this relate to auto ID? So, ambient IoT is near and dear to my heart, but essentially you can think of it as very similar to RFID for the purposes of this discussion, at least. How, people can say, look, I've got NFC or I've got RFID. Why do I need distributed ledger technology, and what's the relationship between those two
That's
things?
a good question. So they are technologies in a different spectra. I mean, it's with RFID on NFC, you are connecting the physical world to the digital world. So you can, for instance, know that a particular item in the supply chain is in a place. It's true with RFID. But imagine that you want to uh, check whether it is a fake or it is not a fake. Then for those purposes, you may need a blockchain or DLT technology. Why? Because you would need some tamper-proof transaction that this is the real item. So and they are in different levels, but as I said before in one of my examples, you can bridge the two together in certain use cases.
Yeah. So the RFID ID would reference a transaction in the distributed ledger. Is that the link?
Exactly. Or you could actually have, for instance, the label ID being recorded in the ledger. So essentially, someone has cloned your RFID. You can check that the RFID,
Right.
something on those lines. We did some experiments about how to avoid counterfeiting with RFID, because usually the RFID, the label ID, that it is not so easy to be cloned. You can, but it's more difficult than just writing an ID in an RFID.
Right. And I guess if I was selling ambient IoT tags like the Williot tags, they do have encryption, end-to-end encryption, but it's private key encryption. It's AES 128-bit, and so I'm assuming what you guys have is basically even more robust, and so you kind of take a slightly, you get a more secure data carrier, but then you have an even more secure distributed ledger technology that could complement it.
Exactly. So we need to understand particular use cases with your technology and how we could fit together.
Yeah.
With the advantages or difference you may have with RFID, but happy to learn more on that side.
Yeah. And hopefully we'll have the opportunity to do that. We're both participating in this Horizon Chips EU Smart Food Chain Initiative, and I'm glad we are, because our paths crossed there, and I got to know you. One last question about IOTA is: so is it a non-profit? Is that correct?
That's a good question. Yes, IOTA is a non-for-profit foundation established in Germany. And at the moment, another 2 entities are also giving support to the project, one in Switzerland and another in Abu Dhabi, but both, the three of them, non-for-profit. And the reason for having 3 entities is because they are focused on different things. The German entity in the R&D, DLT specific, and the other 2 entities in ecosystem development activities, and the funds actually for those have actually come from the community that had bet on the IOTA project. So just even in the beginning, the first round of funding for the IOTA Foundation came from a donation from the community that trusted, that the project could bring real value.
So Jose, how did you end up getting this illustrious job that you've got? For people that want to follow in your footsteps, tell us a bit about a brief story of how you got to where you got to.
Yeah, no. Well, I've been working in the industry for 25 years. I've been involved in different stages, different projects around my career, but mostly around open source projects that they innovate in different areas. So I started with the mobile web, with a platform for adaptation of applications to multiple devices when devices were very small and very, very diverse.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I did the same thing. I worked for a company called Volantis, and we had a write once, publish everywhere framework that allowed. That was before
we have
cascading.
Similar stuff.
Yeah, it was
focus on
before cascading
applications.
style sheets.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And when the iPhone came and Android came, when they
ruined
have
all of that.
full browsers, then the story changed, and that was
Yes.
needed, but not fully needed. So that's why I moved to a different stuff, which was creating an operating system based on the web, based on a browser. And this is together with the Mozilla Foundation, Firefox OS, that a project that didn't fly, but it was very, very interested in understanding the capabilities of the web, how you could build a device fully from the web browser, how all the behind the scenes, how operating system for mobile devices work. So that was also very interesting project.
Yeah, it sounds it. And again, we have something vaguely in common. My first job after graduating from college was I worked on writing device drivers for Unix, the predecessor to Linux. And in fact, I wrote with someone else, I wrote a book on it, which has to qualify as one of the most boring books in the world. But it was. He got me a good job. Okay, so how did you get from writing operating systems that ran in web browsers like Chrome to where you are now?
That the next stage was the Internet of Things, and and all this revolution of devices that can sense the environment, where a lot of that. But in this case, applied to smart cities. So in cities where you can deploy sensors for controlling different aspects. So traffic, weather, all the conditions around the city, and capturing this context information. And that was the project Fiverr, which is currently a foundation that I was part of it. as well in the
Oh,
past, and creating the APIs that would allow you to gather all that information from the different sensors, etc., and offering that to applications as REST APIs. Yeah, we created a standard which is NGSI LD, which is like the context APIs based on JSON LD that allow you to retrieve all that information. We created the data models, because one important is not only a matter of the APIs, but also the data models that allow you to consume that information from different aspects of the environment in cities. And that was another 5 years.
yeah. And so just to ask you about that. So this is like an operating system, an open operating system for a city,
Yes.
a smart city, so that people can consume the data from traffic systems and other systems. So we used to hear a lot about smart cities. We hear less about them. Is that because they're all smart now, or people figured out that there was a lot of hype, or
No, I
what's your
think
take on smart cities?
my take is that the smart cities are there, so,
Yeah.
but the concept of the smart city is very broad. And actually, cities started being a little bit smart when they deployed transport management systems. So when when your next bus is coming, and it is announced, when you control the parking, and those kind
Yeah.
of systems have been there now for years. And so cities are smart. All of them pretty much are smart at the moment, in certain aspects, but in other more advanced aspects, or on combining all that information, for instance, information from traffic with information from parking, or weather information, in order to automate situation awareness when there is some kind of alert. So all that of higher levels of being smart, that it is more cross domain, is where still things are not so integrated. So there are different verticals, but sometimes they
Okay.
are not integrated, and so on and so forth. But I think smart city features are there since 10 years ago. So
So how fragmented is this world? Is it like the old days of where there was like all these different operating systems, and as an application developer that was very limiting, or is it like now where basically everyone uses Linux, whether it's on a phone or a
yeah,
server or whatever?
well, that there are multiple solutions out there, but the for instance, one of the protocols that everybody is using is MQTT, and that's
Oh,
very
okay.
very very deployed for when the devices need to offer the information. However,
Yeah.
one of the issues is, as a developer, that you want to consume data from multiple verticals. How do you do that? This is what we did with Fiverr. So with Fiverr, we harmonize the way you see the data of the city, the context of
Yeah.
your city, without
Yeah.
being so much aware about what are the devices behind that are supplying that data. And actually, the
Okay.
citizen could be just a sensor, if you provide the data with your device, and so on and so forth.
Right. Well, that sounds very, very good thing to do, and I applaud your efforts there. And I'm sure you kind of had a lot of battle scars from trying to get everyone to speak the same data language.
Exactly. And that's a
Yeah,
battle that
yeah,
appears around different domains, not only smart cities. So where we are going to talk, or when we talk about other domains, it's something that it is
yes,
there. Harmonizing data, having a common
yeah.
vocabulary, etc., etc.
I really have this feel that many of us essentially have one calling in our careers, and we keep on trying to crack this thing. The job changes, but basically there's an idea that we're passionate about, and we go about it.
Exactly.
And my startup, which we're now calling Ambient Chat, I'm basically trying to solve the problems that I was trying to solve at Wiliot, and then before that at Qualcomm. And, it's just, you kind of get passionate about something and you just can't give up. So the question is, can you solve it before you keel over? So anyway, how did you get from smart cities to distributed ledger technology?
Yeah. Now, when I was working in the smart city domain, some DLT-based applications for smart cities are starting to appear, and the powerfulness of ledgers, or having immutable data, transactions that can be agreed by a network, etc., and applying that to the data use cases started to be attractive for me, and the opportunity arose with the IOTA Foundation. So I am not an engineer like a distributed systems engineer. That is the background you need to create the protocols, for DLT. My background is more on the how could I apply this nice technology to a specific domain or to a specific problem. And this is when the opportunity from IOTA came to join the team that was applying IOTA Ledger to supply chains,
Yeah.
And in supply chains, there is also devices as well, if you wish, IoT devices. And there is a need of data management. There is a need of multiple actors talking the same language, etc., etc. So, and also there is also the need of applying the distributed ledger to these multiple actors to talk together. So I thought, this is I investigated a bit, and I said, this is a very good opportunity to, restart a career around these problems, and setting the standard, because there is no standard here. So we are now paving the way, so to say. And
And how long have you been doing it for?
now 5 years time, and I've lived different I would say stages of the IOTA project, but also different stages of our supply chain solution, or application of blockchain to supply chain problems. We started doing everything on chain, then we realized, this is not the this is not the case. So we need to store the data in traditional databases, and then have the ledger as a data commitment layer.
But what I do want to do is ask you the most important question, which is, what are 3 songs that have significance for you?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
They don't have to be the most significant ones. So I don't want to make it that difficult, but just could be any 3 songs that have significance for you.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I have to be honest, there are songs that are most known just in the Spaniard market, and that I am not going to mention them. So I'm going to mention international songs.
Oh, okay.
So first one is
okay, you could have done that. I'm happy to have Spanish songs.
Okay, but I'm going to mention 3 international ones. So one is from REM, from REM, which is It is the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. And this is I feel recognized there, because I have doing different projects, and I have felt that I have had that feeling many times. That
it's the end of the world.
Okay, this project has finished, but now there is a new thing, and I feel fine. I need to learn. I need to understand new things. I need to work with different people. And that's, for me, it's very, very nice. And the other one is from Vangelis, is the soundtrack of Carriers of Fire. So I like, the entry of that film, where, all the red runners are there, and the team spirit, but also the you want to improve every day. So I love that sequence.
Chariots of Fire, amazing movie. It's an amazing movie, quite old, but it does make me want to run every time I see it, which I don't do much these days. So.
And third one is Philadelphia, from Bruce Springsteen. And I love the song also because of the entry of the film, where when the film starts, they show the streets of Philadelphia, and they show different people doing different things, like a community, like
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
diverse. And that's why Philadelphia also it's a favorite zone.
And I assume, have you been to the United States? I assume you have.
Yeah, I've been there a few times, but not
Yeah.
unfortunately Philadelphia. But I just only
Okay.
made one of my legs to the West Coast. One time was in Philadelphia,
Yeah.
but unfortunately I've never visited the city.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a while for me as well. So very good. Well, Jose, it's been a real pleasure, a real treat. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
Well, that was Jose. It was a very intense discussion. I think we were both like exhausted at the end of it, but hopefully useful to you. I just wanted to say a quick thank you to someone who I don't think I've thanked before on the podcast, Mark Maron, who's wrapped up well over a decade of podcasting, and he's been a role model for me. If you haven't checked out his podcast, WTF, then you've got an amazing archive of incredible conversations with rock stars, politicians, a lot of comedians, and Mark is just incredibly gifted. And it's with some sadness that I saw him retire. He recorded his very last interview with Barack Obama, and that's worth a listen and kind of gives you some hope and inspiration. I forgot to mention my album of the week last show, so I'm not going to do that this time. Although I'm going to do it with some trepidation. Normally I kind of feel good about spreading the word about hopefully worthwhile music. And so I'm very partial to the likes of the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin, and no embarrassment there. But Taylor Swift, I confess, a little embarrassed, but I'm completely besotted by her latest album, Life of a Showgirl, something like that. Anyway, it's you can't fail to find it. I saw her live on her last tour, and it was one of the best concerts I've ever seen. It converted me from a reluctant bystander to being a Swiftie, and this album is just beautifully crafted. It's a work of art, and in many ways. So yeah, it's not Juruti Column, it's not Elvis Costello. It's jolly entertaining and incredibly well crafted, and it's just been stuck in my head since we started listening to it on our trip to Hawaii. Okay, that's enough from me. Just need to thank Aaron Hammock for his sterling work pulling this show together. Couldn't do it without him. And to you for listening to the end, or listening at all. If you listen for 5 minutes, I'm grateful for that too. If you decide you want to give back, then let other people know about it. Review the show, at the very least subscribe to it so you don't miss out on future episodes. And if there's anyone you think we should have on the show, then let me know. Love the input. Until next time, be safe and enjoy the journey. Thanks for watching this episode of the Mr. Beacon Ambient IoT podcast. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please like and share this video, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss further episodes. For more information about our sponsors, head over to blecon.net, identiv.com, and ambientChat.ai.